Welcome to the National Hellenic Museum. I'm Laura Calamos, the president here at the museum. I want to welcome all of you here to Greektown. We're absolutely thrilled to have you here and the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic. This is such an exciting event. The National Hellenic Museum has been a museum for the Greek community and the Chicago community for well over 30 years. We've been in this museum and this facility since 2011. It's the largest collection of Greek American artifacts in the world. We have over 20,000 artifacts dedicated to the Greek American story and the immigrant experience. Upstairs on the third floor is the exhibit dedicated to that. And then we have two other galleries with rotating exhibitions, including right now the Greek refugee crisis from 2015-2017. As you may have followed in the news, over 1 million people traveled across the Mediterranean trying to flee war and persecution. So we like to tell the story of crossroads. Greeks are storytellers and always have been. Much like people in every culture, we use myth and story and history and philosophy and education and music to tell the rich, complex stories of the human experience. And that's what we do every day through field trips and tours. So if you didn't get a chance to see the museum today, come back, become a member, join us. We will be putting Hippocrates himself on trial at the trial of Hippocrates at the Harris Theater on February 20th. It's another one of our fun events, but education is what we like to do, and critical thinking and questioning the world goes right at the heart of the Greek experience. Again, without further ado, I want to invite you to enjoy Greektown, enjoy the National Hellenic Museum, and more importantly, enjoy Dr. Zervis, the rest of the team, and the Chicago Jazz Philharmonic. Thank you so much for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome, everyone. My name is Bertie Sodi. I'm the Executive Director of Chicago Jazz Philharmonic. And thank you again to the National Hellenic Museum for hosting us here in their beautiful venue. I hope many of you got a chance to check out their amazing exhibits that they've got here in their collection. Also want to just quickly acknowledge our funders for tonight's free program. That wouldn't be possible without our funders, the Riva and David Logan Foundation, as well as ComEd. And thanks also to CAN TV for coming out tonight to film the event for future broadcasts. So if any of your friends are missing tonight, you can send them a quick text that they'll get to watch it on CAN TV, Chicago Cable Channel 27, I believe. Said that right? So just a little background on Chicago Immigrant Stories. The project Immigrant Stories, we definitely conceived in January of 2017, and if you can remember 2 years ago, this was really a direct response to our current administration's travel ban, the Muslim ban at the time, there's more in your program, just some background reading about the development of the idea, but who could believe 2 years later we're now on this, how much this issue has still continued to deepen. And become more complicated in so many different ways we couldn't have imagined 2 years ago. Since then, families have been separated. Young children have died in detainment. Our government is currently at a political stalemate because of a border wall that most of our country, most of Americans agree is not the right thing to do. So here we are, 2 years later. Immigrant Stories that, we as Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, being an organization based about bridging jazz, classical, and other genres, have found this avenue and this way through music, which has always historically been the one way just to bring people together and to share stories and to learn about each other and to feel that connectedness in our communities, are gonna continue with this project, I think, for at least a decade to come, it sounds like. I mean, just given the richness of our city and all the immigrant communities that we have here in Chicago, and celebrate all the musicians that we have within those communities. So this season we are working with Dr. Zervis, an accomplished Greek composer and woodwind musician. And then next month we'll be down at the National Museum of Mexican Art celebrating Sones de Mexico. who their leader, Juan Diaz, actually just won an amazing award. So we'll have to celebrate that as well next month. So we hope you'll join us for that. The tickets do go on sale for that tomorrow morning. Not on sale, just reserve them, right? We will take donations, though. So speaking of, we are happy, if you're so inspired by tonight's experience that you would like to contribute to Chicago Jazz Philharmonic, you can certainly leave an envelope at the door or for future consideration. And certainly, we'd love to hear your feedback as well about your experience tonight and whether the impact that we're intending to have is making that impact. So I encourage you also to fill out your exit surveys. Thanks so much. And without further ado, I'd like to bring up Orbert Davis to introduce the project, and we'll get to some wonderful music. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was Miles Davis' Milestones. And I thought it was appropriate to start with modal jazz because that's where we're kind of starting with the bridging of Greek music with jazz and classical music. I have to, first of all, I don't know if it's an apology or a warning. This is not a concert. Sorry for those who thought, well, and I guess it's not a concert because we haven't rehearsed. We haven't rehearsed. We have no idea basically what we're going to do. And I don't know if you heard WBEZ this morning. Jen White was surprised when I said she's talking about the process. I said, well, we're going to have conversations. We're going to have. We got to know each other. We're gonna learn about our cultures, who we are, why we are American, and what it means to be an American. And then sometime around April or May, we'll compose a piece for full orchestra to play at Millennium Park this summer. And I'm cool with that. But this is good because you're part of the experiment that everything that goes into tonight and the many conversations that we've started and will have will be a part of that composition. So I'm so glad that you're here, and you'll be a part of that. And some of the notes that you hear tonight will make its way into the symphonic piece. So I don't want to waste any more time without introducing my friend, who I've known for a very long time, even though our paths actually on 2 occasions sort of crossed at 2 different universities, Columbia College many years ago, and then I decided to get a master's degree in my 30s, and guess who's my professor? Dr. Service. We had a good time. That was cool. So without any further ado, Athanasios Zervas.
Thank you, my friend Albert. It's a great pleasure to be under the roof of the National Hellenic Museum. To me, it feels like I am under the shadow of the Parthenon. And also, of course, performing with these great musicians and one of the best on earth composers, guitarist, trompetist, professor, arranger, conductor, but above all, human. Thank you. Inspiration. Talking to Albert, you're deeply inspired. You open your heart, you see how rich in emotions this person is, and the work he does throughout his history, throughout all the time he spends on practicing and offering to the music and to the society. He works having a goal to bring people together and make them feel free and good. Thank you, Albert.
It's not going to be easy, guys. But I did tell him it's not a concert, so.
So the first piece that we will try to learn and perform and interpret is called Amaranthos. Amaranthos is based on a Greek rhythm, actually a Greek dance rhythm. The dance is called chamikos. Chamikos dance is danced primarily by men, and at the beginning and later on joined by the women, and it's a heavy, in 3/4 groove. Amarantons means a flower that never dies, always stays strong and smells beautiful and gives nice feeling to the people. So Amaranthos in Chamiko dance.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Leandro Lopez Varade on the keyboard and piano. Zara Zaharieva on violin. Stuart Miller on bass. Suzanne Osman on percussion. Eric Hines on percussion. And Dr. Athanasios Zervas. Well, the first movement of the piece is just about written. No, seriously, because you can't see this, but I have a trusty recorder up here. And seriously, I'll spend a good week or so listening to every single note and draw from the spontaneous aspect of tonight, and it will be with full orchestra. Can't wait. But it's also about the stories, and we wanted to set some time just to continue a conversation we had just a few days ago about what it is basically to be American and what's your story of coming to Chicago. So I would like to hear from Dr. Zervas.
Thank you. Well, I was born in many years ago, in 1959, in a small town that is called Filiatra. Filiatra is at the southwestern tip of Greece. It's actually in the state of Messenia, and during the wars between the Lacedaemonians, the Spartans, and the ancient Messenians, the Spartans eventually won the war and Messenians were defeated. So they went across to Sicily and they established a state that's called Messina even today. So Filiatra, my hometown, was influenced under the Western musical traditions and style, and the people, instead of singing bucolic tunes like the one you just heard at the beginning, they sang canzonetas and cantadas with mandolins and guitars. I was exposed to that music, and eventually, when I was in the 4th grade, I joined the marching band of the town and started practicing legit stuff, classical music, and clarinet. Legit, quote unquote. Legit stuff, yes. So when I finished high school, I went, of course, to the army, and through examinations, I entered the State Conservatory of Thessaloniki, Northern Greece, and later on the Athens Conservatoire, the two best conservatories of Greece, actually, the Juilliard Schools of Music of Greece. And there I studied with great professors who most of them were actually members of the state orchestras or the lyric orchestras, the orchestras of the lyric operas and so on. And they were very strict in classical music and stuff. When I was in the army, a friend of mine gave me a tape, a cassette, and said, listen to this music. So one night, I played that particular cassette in a very small cassette player. I had a cheap one. It was music that kicked my heart, kicked my butt, kicked my head, kicked my life. And I said, this is the music I like to do. I didn't know what music was that. It was Charlie Parker playing the most famous tunes of his and his solos and stuff. I was amazed. I said, I'm going to become a jazz musician no matter what. So I went back to the conservatory after I finished with the army business and stuff. I was in Athens, and I asked my professor, I said, I'm thinking to study jazz, to go to the United States and study jazz music. He said, what are you talking about? You are my successor in the Symphony Orchestra of Athens. You are going to be the first chair clarinet. You are good and this and that. No, I'm not going to give you a recommendation letter, go to, to study in the States. So I said, listen, I have applied and they have accepted me, but in order to get the scholarship, I have to have 2 recommendation letters. One, I mean, you are my professor. Who should I ask? So he said, I'm going to give you a recommendation letter only if you decide to go to the Conservatory of Paris to study classical music. He was a very strict but very sweet man, and he liked me very much, so we compromised. I said, okay, write a recommendation letter to whom it may concern in French and give it to me. So he did. He gave me the recommendation in French. I still have it, a copy of it. And I asked also a recommendation letter for an astronomer, a mathematician, a great mathematician who was professor at the University of Athens. He knew me, and because I was good in mathematics, we had conversations with him. So he wrote it. So I got accepted. And I went to Boston, Berklee College of Music, the best jazz school, a very famous jazz school. In Europe, everybody wants to go to that school. In Greece, many friends of mine went to that school. And I went to Berklee College of Music, and I was amazed by the facility, the buildings, the classrooms, the studios, how well the curriculum was organized, the professors, the young talent from all over the world. So I was crazy, I loved it. And I was walking around. The very first day I went there, I was walking around and listening to the music. They were jamming lessons and stuff. So I said, let me go outside, have a walk to see, the landscape. So I went and was walking outside, and I sat down, and I was looking at the buildings and listening to the music that was coming out of the buildings, and that was, the music from young people, full of talent. And I said, no, I don't want to be told about jazz. I want to go into the roots of jazz and feel the soul of jazz. So I'm not going to stay here. I went back, said, I'm not accepting the scholarship. Said, what are you talking about, the dean? What are you talking about? No, I'm not accepting the scholarship. I'm leaving. Thank you. They tried to convince me to stay there, so I left. I came to Chicago. I came to Chicago, why? I thought, jazz started in New Orleans. They still play the traditional style. The best people that created the actual music that's called jazz music, Charlie Parker style, or Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane, Johnny Griffin, and so on. They formed that in the Midwest, St. Louis, Chicago, Detroit, Kansas City. These were the places. But the most metropolitan area, the biggest place is Chicago, so I'm going to Chicago. And I came here, and I met, accidentally, a musician. I was playing in a small Greek restaurant, flute, music, every Saturday, to make just a little money, gross money. So one night, walked in a guy holding an upright bass. I said, this guy must be a jazz musician, holding an upright bass. So in the break, I approached him and I said, what's your name? Antti. My name is Athanasios. Okay. Are you a jazz musician? Yes, I'm a jazz musician. Oh, I want to study jazz. I came from Boston here. I told him my story. He said, oh, well, I know a guy. I know a guy, but he's very intense, very difficult. I don't know if he's really accepting you. And so I said, I will try. So his name is Joe Daly. Very good professor, very good saxophonist. Great, great person. Intense person. I liked it. I started going to lessons with after I passed the audition with him, but after a while, I met another guy, and I was not still in the area of African American music. You see, I was outside of the community. And I asked my friend John Lambros, a Greek American guy, I said, I want to study South Side, Chicago. He said, there are two great places there. One is Chicago State University, and Bunty Green teaches there. And the other is AACM Center, you know. I said, oh, yes. So I took the red line. I went to Chicago State. I went to the music building, and I walked. I did actually the same steps I did in Berkeley College building, in the rooms and stuff. So all of a sudden I heard some sound coming out of a door, very large door. I said, must be auditorium. Probably they have a jam or concert. It was a magic music. It was a combination of free music, free jazz, strict bap, gospel, and blues. And a new feeling for me, deep feeling. So I opened the door and walked in, and I saw about 80 people. Some of them holding instruments, some others without instruments in their hands. Dancing, singing, jamming, playing music, and the great African-American teacher of mine, Bunty Green, the professor, playing on the piano. He was a great pianist besides a great saxophonist. I said, that's it! This is the place I was looking for all this time. So I gave auditions, I passed the tests, and so I enrolled there, and I had the privilege, I had the great luck, and studying with Bunky for many years, 3 years actually. I graduated from that school, and after I went to Northwestern to advanced studies in saxophone, jazz, ethnomusicology, and I got my master's degree in saxophone and composition, and my doctorate in composition. So this is my short story. When I left from Greece, as my dear friend Albert Davis said before, we are going to play something that we haven't rehearsed. We don't know where it's going to take us. When I left from Greece, I had a dream to study jazz, that's it. And I'm very happy that I did it. So it was a good trip, tiring many times. I had to face many problems, like everyone has. But I have the bliss that I think I went very deep into that great music, that humanistic music, jazz music, and I learned so much of the people and of the music. Thank you.
One of the things I'm very excited about is, again, we, Athanasios sent some music yesterday, right? Yeah, basically. And we said, okay, well, let's approach this. And one thing we discovered just in our sound check today was the aspect of freedom, is that the music starts in one place, but just like we move as people and we become part of our new environment, this music that we play becomes new in a new environment. So I'm so excited about just starting with this foundation, but yet infusing jazz and modes to that. So we'll see where this goes.
Thank you. The great soloists, Oliver Davis, a great group of people. Well, the tune you just heard, the title is Alerta, and comes out of alert, alerta. It is based, it's an original piece. It is based on an ancient Greek scale. William Russo used to say that this particular pentatonic scale that the piece is based, it was the beloved scale of Socrates. It's called ditonic. Ditonic scale, it's very similar scale because it's pentatonic, but because of the structure of the intervals, it's a very similar scale to some African scales and some scales from Latin America. So the piece, it's the material, the actual material can be transformed, although it's an ancient Greek scale, can be transformed into blues and to Latin. That's why I put it on a Latin groove and samba style. So I fused different things. I hope you liked it.
So we just want to do a couple more things for you. How many of you experienced our Chicago Immigrant Stories last year? All right, thank you. Millennium Park, we here at Millennium Park? Yeah. As you know, last year we focused on 3 communities, Chinese American community, the Asian Indian community, and then West African drumming. This year we decided to just do 2, as Bertie said earlier. But there's a third element that's very important to our orchestra that we also wanted to bring credence to, and that's simply that we have first generation immigrants in the orchestra. So right now I'd like to just briefly for Leandro, Zara, and Suzanne to tell a little bit of their story. Zara's first.
Oh, no. Thank you. I just want to say before I begin, I was like, I don't want to say some of the stuff that some of my friends here have heard, but Leandro, I said, this will be boring for people, and Leandro was like, what are you talking about? This is your life. Nothing about your life is boring, or anyone's life. It doesn't matter how it goes. But yeah, I came when I was 18 years old to United States. I didn't know where I'm gonna go. Besides, I had a chance to. Talking is so hard. Why can't we just? Why can't we just?
I'll stand here with you. And Josh is right there. Just look at him.
Even though Aristotle said it, excellence is a habit. Orbert is the one who actually taught me this. So it's and excellence. It's really like freedom. Free is to be excellent. I think that's what I've learned through Orbert. But okay, here we are. So where are you from? I'm from Bulgaria. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh.
I'll help her
Yeah,
out.
let me say a couple more quotes and close it. I am from Bulgaria, and yeah, I grew up in a household not of musicians, but of musicians lovers. My mom was really big into R&B, all R&B, and my father loved Janis Joplin and Chicago and Yes, and so on and so forth. So I was supposed to be a martial artist, but as it's turning out, I stuck to the violin. And at the age of 18, I had to leave because a lot of different circumstances. But the way I chose where I'm gonna go was Michael.
Let's get a drum roll for this.
No.
Why she came to Chicago? Why'd you come to
Michael Jordan, everyone. I love basketball, and that was my biggest high all throughout my life. Thursday night with the Bulls, and actually being able to watch it in Bulgaria, and so I did not know anybody. I did not speak the language. I did not know what I'm gonna do. I had $200. I had no plan of action whatsoever. But when I opened the map, Chicago sounded good. At this time, Jordan was already in Washington, but still, Chicago's always, yeah. When I came, I started working in a Serbian place because I did not speak the language. Shortly, this faded. I really was very hungry for music. I was randomly walking. I'm going to mention this because I think it's important. I know we have to keep it brief. But I was randomly walking by DePaul University. Did not know what DePaul is whatsoever at that time. saw a poster for a free concert for violin and piano, went on the next day, completely changed my life. I went and I introduced myself. The only words I could say to the violinist were very thank you. That was the only thing I could combine together that sound decent in English. And so he took the time to actually speak to me. I ended up studying with him and then transferring to NIU, where I met Josh, and who's a bass player and my husband. We've been together forever. And this is where at NIU later I was introduced to jazz more heavily, and it did help that the bass player for the jazz department was super hot. That also helped of my interest. But no, really, it's a music that I've always loved, always listened to, and yeah, many years later, to just imagine that I can even like listen to somebody like Orbert and Stuart and Leandro and all of you guys, to just imagine that I can listen, let alone play alongside, is just, it blows my mind every day. So like I said, it's a dream being here. It's incredible being here, and I love music, and I think music can change us all for the best. So that's it.
And the mutual.
Thank you.
Suzanne.
Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne Osman. You might notice right, off the bat that I don't exactly have quite the accent like Zara does, but that's mostly because when I immigrated, I was much younger. So I was born in Lebanon, and my family immigrated to the United States when I was 4 years old, and we immigrated as a result of the Civil War. So it was kind of funny, but Orbert earlier was telling me, I want you to tell me your war baby story. I'm like, got it. So yeah, I grew up, I was born amidst sounds that technically are very percussive sounds. So looking back later, it's not very typical that a woman in this culture would gear towards percussion. But I think, kind of growing up with these percussive sounds of war actually surrounding you, it's amazing what you absorb as a child. So anywho, the war was obviously, it's a war and it's tragic. So schools were shutting down and hospitals were shutting down. My family decided to come to the United States for a while, hopefully with enough time to kind of let that pass over, and then we'll go back and carry on as before. But that's not the way it happened, not the way it evolved. With time, my family settled. My father was a principal, my mom was a teacher, and now I'm a teacher also, and I work for the CJP. I'm a teaching artist. But one interesting thing is, when you come to a new place, you have to start over, start from scratch. So a lot of the certifications and licensing that they had accomplished in Lebanon no longer was valid. So my dad ended up going into like mechanics, and my mom went into a dental office, and we're starting over. So I had a very interesting few years growing up, and I think one thing that really drew me towards music and helped me kind of decide that this is really what I want to do is that it always cheered my family up. It became a very close. My parents didn't go out much. But they always listened to music at home. And my mom would always dance, and it's like the one thing, to make us laugh or to cheer us up. She'd turn up the music and start her belly dancing, and start making fun of herself. It's a little heavier set lady, but it never held her back, and it's still so beautiful. But to see the way that it kind of had a positive effect on my parents, and I saw that, so while I'm going and learning English and going to school and doing my thing as an American girl, you go back home and you have very different cultural things at play. So I loved the fact that music had that power on people, and it could bring you up regardless of where you're coming from, because ultimately life goes on. So how you live it and what happens in between with or without you, it's going to go on. So I love the fact that it enabled my, people I cared very much about who had gone through such hardship and such horrors of civil war to actually give them something bright and positive. So aside from being a musician and doing percussion and also some oud with the CJP, I'm a music therapist. So that also led me into the psychological, therapeutic effects and ability of music. So having the background that I have, I think it enables me really to connect with the students that I've worked with for so long in the south side of Chicago, where Athanasios made his way to get into the heart of jazz. So, working with people, rough streets, rough, kids. It was really fascinating. I sometimes feel like I was placed exactly where I was meant to be. And it enabled me to connect with students that otherwise were very, very hard to get to. And of course, drums helped a lot with that, the power of music and that language, that non-verbal language, but it's still connected. And I'm always so honored when Orbit invites me on to these projects, this project especially because it has even deeper meaning for me coming from where I come from. I have been back a few times to Lebanon, but it's, as you grow older, you start seeing things in a different eye. And although it's an incredibly beautiful region of the world, honestly, you probably don't get much of that in mainstream media, but it really is quite beautiful. My family's from the Central Mountains region, so like very simple mountain folk, but the music that lives there, just for folk music to keep that spirit alive, it's still alive and breathing, and it seems to be able to reach beyond all the material issues maybe that arise. So yeah, it's been a fascinating journey. Thank you so much, Orbit, for having me today. It's also my pleasure to be performing with everyone.
All right, one more. Leandro Lopez Varade.
Yes, really make it short. Good evening. My name is Leandro Lopez Varade. I'm from Argentina. I'm sure that you want to listen more music, no? Yes. So I'm going to make it short. I came 20 years ago to United States. My parents were musicians. My English is not that good yet. Working on it. My dad was a jazz musician, and my mom is a harpist, classical piano player, and composer. So since I was young, I was involved in music, and I wanted to get deep in jazz music. That was the reason because I moved to United States. That was my main reason to learn jazz. And like Athanasios, I was lucky actually to get in Chicago, because Chicago is the place where the roots are of jazz music. So it's coming, like he was saying, through New Orleans, all the Mississippi up, coming to Chicago, and put roots in this place where the jazz has this great connection with the blues. So that's what I needed to learn, because I could learn other styles of jazz music from my country. I was playing, but what they call here like the tap. So I was getting from Miles Davis, Beaches of Brew, and Chick Corea, and all those guys, but from they were doing in the 80s or in the 70s. And I didn't have the roots of the blues. And when I came here, I had the chance to go to the South Side and work in the South Side for many years. Was really lucky to work with L.D. Young. He was the bass player of the Ramsey Lewis Trio. And I traveled with him before I established in Chicago. He was a great bass player and singer, African-American. And then I worked in the South Side in different clubs. And I was lucky to actually get deep in the roots of jazz music. That is what I wanted to do. And then Orbit came and filled one of my dreams, that was trying to connect this, what we call the third stream, that is a connection between classical music and jazz music, but not that like two musics that are separate. So it's not actually a combination between both musics. That is big dream. But I think, we're doing it. Albert is doing it, with this 60-piece orchestra is unbelievable, and he fulfilled one of my dreams. So that's it for me.
All right. And then hopefully you'll join us next month where we'll do the same sort of thing with Sonos de Mexico. And Eric Hines is the percussionist. So we'll hear more from Eric next time. But thank you for hanging out here. And then, of course, Stuart Miller, if you've ever seen CJP, I mean, he's the rock. He's the rock. So we'd like to thank you so much. Before we go, do you have any questions? Because, again, it's about you as well. Anything that we didn't talk about, anything you want to know a little bit more about before we play our last piece? Didn't expect that, did you? There are, but I think tonight we're not as traditional as we would probably want to be at our first meeting. But jazz is a work in progress. So what I like to do having a third stream orchestra is the combining of jazz and classical. It's not just about combining the music, but it's also combining the aesthetics of composition. So we already said we're going to have a couple meetings and lunch and dinner to just talk and explore. I want to learn more about traditional Greek music. And so.
Sorry. Yeah, the goal is osmosis. Qualitative elements from jazz music mixed with qualitative elements from European, Mediterranean styles, and perhaps come up with something that is very interesting as well. This is the point. Yes, we are experimenting. Yes.
So Greek music has a long history as well. How do you feel about playing Greek music in jazz?
I look at it this way: music. There's only 12 notes, and so it's. I don't know. How did I sound playing the Greek melodies? I've just tried to just come right into it. It's my process as a composer is to spend 80% of my time in research and only 20% actually composing. If you have our recording, Sketches of Spain Revisited, I sort of doctored the Miles Davis classic. I got his nephew's permission, so it was cool. He said Miles would be cool with that. But if you listen to the second movement, it starts with Suzanne playing oud, and I actually composed by taking a trip to Spain through National Geographic. So just by placing images all over my screens and just asking myself questions and reading and studying and becoming Spanish in a sense. So when you hear that movement, actually we got a great review from Madrid, some writer in Madrid who actually thought it was Spanish musicians playing it and a Spanish composer. But I think that's a testament to what we want to do is that we're allowed to shed our skin and be in other environments. So today, I'll confess, I was playing that the first mode, the Hatzig. I played it like 4 hours today. My wife kind of comes down, can you play something else? I said, no, I want to feel it. I got to feel it. I'm not feeling it yet. But yes, the process is definitely a part of really understanding and feeling and studying and watching movies, everything to become the music.
It was a success, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay? Oh, sure.
Are we allowed to make comments as opposed to asking questions?
Of course, it's jazz.
The conversation that you had, sorry, I don't know your name.
Zara?
Zara, in the second tune,
Hmm?
that was one of the hottest things.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I love how you said to continue that little band
You noticed. Okay, why do you think I had him continue? Yeah, that's one answer. The second is you're going to hear that in the orchestra. Oh yeah, because I'm already hearing like the strings, French horns. They're playing that figure. Oh man, you guys can't miss the concert. It's going to be. Thank you so much. And I would have to say though, in terms of conversation, one of my greatest moments in life was going to Bulgaria with Zara just a few years ago. We took the core of Chicago Jazz Philharmonic and Zara and performed with the orchestra, Russe Orchestra, and it was absolutely amazing. Just to and you know what my favorite moment is? Is sitting at lunch with you and your mom and talking. I mean, something as simple as that. Just, and I thought about that as we were playing, just going back and forth. And anyway, thank you so much. We could be here all night, of course, but it's time. So we're going to play one more. And again, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight.
The last piece is called Mattia San και τα δικά σου. It's a song, it's a love song about your beautiful eyes. This is the title. Singing for your beautiful eyes. It's coming out of the Aegean Islands, and it's a dance in the Aegean island style. So enjoy it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.